All trains have history deeply rooted in our world's history. Some trains have crossed the 7 seas, some 50 states, others multiple amusement parks. The steam locomotive I'll be talking about is none other than Pacific Coast Railroad Number 3, Melodia, or better known as Frankie by her crew. Built by H.K. Porter in 1897 as an 062T narrow gauge steam engine for the Barker and Lee Pine Company in La Fourche Crossing, Louisiana. Named after a matriarch of the Barker family, she was the second engine for the Barker and Lee Pine Company, the first being a steam donkey on a flat car named Dummy. The third the company owned was a little 1902 built Baldwin 244T, being named Maud L after the 2-year-old daughter of plantation co-owner J. Wilson Lee Pine. Maud L is an interesting engine who also eventually went into the amusement park business in 1961. More on that later. After more than half a century hauling sugarcane on the sugar plantation, Melodia was retired from service. By 1946, she was in the hands of Arthur LaSalle of Hillard, Florida. Arthur, who had also purchased the Maud L in that same year. He performed various locomotive restorations under the moniker of American Railroad Equipment Company. In 1961, Arthur overhauled the Maud L and sold her to the Cedar Point Amusement Park, where she became one of the first pieces of motive power on the railroad. Melodia was sold in 1960 to Hubert Mitchell Industries of Harstel, Alabama, who again sold her shortly after to James Freeland of Hillsborough, North Carolina. Freeland owner Daniel Boone of a Village Amusement Park contracted Crown Metal Products of Elizabeth, Pennsylvania. Crown modified the running gear to fit a new boiler that was already laying around for a 440. Rebuilt in 1963-64, the locomotive remained in Hillsborough until 1970, when it was sold again to Pat Hall, developer of Carowinds Theme Park in Fort Mill, South Carolina. When the park opened in 1973, the locomotive became number 1 of the Carowinds and Carolinas Railroad, retaining the name Melodia on one side and EPH on the other side for the park's creator Earl Patterson Hall. While the successful park continues operation today, the narrow gauge railroad wasn't so lucky. Closing in 1976 after only 3 seasons of operation, after some time, Melodia, along with her passenger cars, would eventually be sold to George Roos, who maintained them as part of his private collection. He leased them briefly to Wild World in the 80s. I sadly couldn't find pictures of her time there. It was short-lived. When Mr. Roos passed away, Melodia was sold to the late Bill Norrid of Oxnard, California. Like his other locomotives, Norrid sent Melodia to the shop services of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, for another rebuild, which included lowering her boiler and making various cosmetic improvements. Funny enough, Carowinds No. 2, a 440 narrow-gauge steam engine built for Carowinds, was at the same shop being rebuilt and restored for another railroad, this time in California, Neverland Ranch, a ranch owned by the late Michael Jackson. Around 1998, Mr. Norrid's family sold Melodia to Mr. Rossi of San Luis Obispo, California, where he was building a small narrow-gauge railroad on his ranch in Santa Margarita. Mr. Norrid also had in his possession 5 of the original Santa Fe and Disneyland passenger cars that he required from Disneyland in 1996. Norrid's family sold Mr. Rossi the 4 middle coaches and donated the combine to the Carolwood Foundation. Remember that little engine, Maud L? Well, Maud L wasn't really needed at Cedar Point anymore. Meanwhile, in California, the Disneyland Railroad needed a smaller engine for their narrow-gauge railroad. So, Cedar Point traded the Maud L for the Ward Kimball, and Disney put her to service in 2006 as the second Ward Kimball. So, Melodia's old stablemate on the sugar plantation now resides at Anaheim, California on the Disneyland Railroad. Carowin 2 is somewhere, maybe, in California? And now, Melodia, now referred to as Frankie, short for Frankenstein or Frankenporter, is now in active service on the Pacific Coast Railroad in Santa Margarita, with 2 other steam locomotives which, funny enough, also have amusement park history behind them. But that's a story for another video. If you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more. All sources documenting the engines discussed today will be linked in the description below.